The room is quiet, but the mess is loud. Not loud in sound, but in presence. It pulls at the eyes the moment you step in, like unfinished sentences scattered across the room. A plate sits where a meal ended hours ago, the edges dried, the center still holding the faint smell of food. Shoes rest in the doorway, angled carelessly, forcing every person who enters to adjust their step. A towel lies across the bed, heavy with dampness, slowly cooling the fabric beneath it, instead of drying where it belongs. None of these things are dramatic on their own. They are ordinary, familiar, almost harmless, but together they create a feeling. A low, persistent tension that doesn't announce itself, yet refuses to leave. And in that first moment before irritation tightens the chest, before the mouth opens to say something, already said too many times, a question surfaces quietly, almost tender in its confusion. Why don't they see what I see? Why does this register as noise to me, but disappear into the background for them? Most people believe teaching tidiness is an act of instruction, a matter of explanation, of reminders repeated until they either work or wear everyone down. They tape rules to the fridge. They rehearse speeches in their head before family meetings. They correct, point, insist, and when nothing changes, they assume the problem is stubbornness or disrespect. But the truth is much quieter than that. The most powerful influence in any home is rarely spoken. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't defend itself. It doesn't argue its case. It simply shows up, the same way, every day, whether anyone is paying attention or not. Influence, at its deepest level, doesn't feel like teaching. It feels like living. It's not what you say when frustration finally spills over. It's what you do in the moments no one thinks you're making a point. Imagine a morning just before the house wakes up. The kind of morning that belongs only to you. Light filters through the curtains in thin, pale lines, touching the walls without fully waking them. The air is cool. The floor sends a small chill through your feet as you move quietly, careful not to disturb the stillness. You don't announce your intentions. You don't think in terms of cleaning. You simply begin moving through the space as if restoring balance. A cushion is straightened with one gentle motion. Not aggressively, not to make a statement, just enough to return it to itself. You rinse your cup as soon as you're done, watching the water carry away the last trace of the morning. You hang your jacket instead of letting it collapse over a chair, where it would wait silently to be dealt with later. There is no audience, no validation, no acknowledgement, just rhythm, just consistency. And somewhere, just outside your awareness, someone else absorbs it, not in a way they could describe, not in a way they would admit if asked, but the human mind is always recording patterns, always noting what happens without instruction. Humans are creatures of imitation long before they become creatures of logic. Long before we understand reasons, we understand routines. Long before we learn why something matters, we learn how it's done by watching those closest to us, especially those who move without performance. This is the invisible influence. It operates beneath language, beneath resistance, beneath ego. When tidiness is practiced without resentment, without dramatic sighs or passive-aggressive gestures, the atmosphere of a home begins to change. The act stops feeling like correction and starts feeling like care. The sound of a cloth wiping a surface becomes part of the house's natural rhythm. The soft click of objects returning to their place becomes familiar, expected. Over time, the space itself seems to remember how it's meant to feel. Chaos doesn't disappear overnight, but it begins to feel out of place. Think of how children learn to speak. No one hands them a rule book. No one explains sentence structure. They listen. They absorb tone, rhythm, repetition. They mimic what surrounds them long before they understand meaning. Tidiness works the same way. When someone grows up or simply lives inside an environment where order is normal, where calm is the default, where care is quietly practiced, disorder begins to feel strange without anyone ever being shamed for it. And this influence doesn't stop at childhood. Adults, though less willing to admit it, are shaped by their environment just as deeply. A partner raised in clutter may reject criticism, but they respond to contrast. A sibling who tunes out reminders still absorbs patterns. A parent set in their habits may not change immediately, but they notice when one person's way of moving through the space makes everything feel lighter. Picture a kitchen after dinner. The conversation has ended. The energy of the meal lingers. One person stands, clears their plate, rinses it, and places it neatly in the rack. No commentary, no pointed glance. The counter is wiped in a single pass. The table is left bare, breathing again. Another person remains seated, scrolling absently, their plate still in front of them. For a while, nothing happens. No reminder, no tension. But slowly, the clean surface begins to speak. The lone plate feels heavier than it did before. More visible, more intentional, and almost without thought, the hand reaches for it. This is not control. This is not pressure. This is invitation. There is a reason monasteries feel peaceful the moment you step inside. Not because monks are constantly corrected, but because repetition has trained the mind to expect calm. There is a reason certain homes feel restful without being perfect. It isn't about aesthetics. It's about predictability. Knowing where things belong. Sensing that nothing is competing for your attention. Mess creates friction even when people deny it. It tugs at the nervous system. It fragments focus. It demands small decisions again and again. Tidiness, by contrast, quiets the mind. It tells the brain, you are safe here. Nothing urgent is being asked of you. When you live that truth quietly, others begin to feel it before they can explain it. How you clean matters as much as the cleaning itself. If tidiness is always paired with frustration, complaints, or self-sacrifice, it becomes something to avoid. No one wants to inherit a habit that seems to drain the person practicing it. But when tidiness is calm, almost meditative, it draws people in. Imagine folding laundry slowly, the warmth still trapped in the fabric, the clean scent barely noticeable, each movement unhurried, intentional. Someone passes by and sees not obligation, but stillness. They see a moment where time softens. In that moment, tidiness stops being a chore. It becomes care, a pause, a reset. This is how habits spread. Not through force, but through desire. There will be moments when it feels pointless. Days when the mess returns as quickly as you clear it. Times when you feel unseen. This is where most people give up. They expect influence to be immediate, visible, dramatic. But real influence is cumulative. It works the way water shapes stone, not by striking it, but by returning to it again and again. Consistency is louder than confrontation. Each time you return something to its place, you define normal. Each time you clean without complaint, you remove drama from maintenance. Each time you maintain your own space, even when others don't, you create a living contrast. And slowly, without ceremony, people begin to change. Not because they were told to, but because the environment trained them to feel when something is off. Not perfection, but awareness. Not control, but shared responsibility. Not resentment, but quiet alignment. This is how habits transfer. Not through force, but through desire. Desire is quiet. It doesn't argue. It doesn't defend itself. It simply grows when something feels better than what came before. People don't adopt habits because they are told they should. They adopt them because, at some point, the habit begins to promise relief, ease, a lighter way of moving through the day. And that promise takes time to register. There will be moments of resistance. Long stretches where nothing seems to change. Days when you clear a surface in the morning and find it cluttered again by evening. Times when you feel invisible, like your effort dissolves the moment you turn away. These moments are discouraging precisely because they feel silent. There's no feedback, no confirmation, no visible reward. This is where most people give up. They assume influence must announce itself to be real. That change should be immediate, visible, dramatic. But real influence doesn't move like a command. It moves like weather, slowly, repeatedly, almost imperceptibly. It works the way water shapes stone, not by striking it once, but by returning to it every day, wearing away resistance grain by grain. Consistency is louder than confrontation. Every time you return something to its place without comment, you reinforce an expectation. Every time you wipe a surface as you pass it, you remove the sense that cleaning is an event that requires energy and emotion. It becomes maintenance, not drama. a natural part of moving through the space. And when you keep your own area orderly, even when no one else does, you create a living contrast. One side of the room holds tension, the other holds ease. One feels busy, the other feels breathable. You don't need to explain the difference. People feel it in their body before they think it in their mind. Slowly, something subtle begins to shift. Family members start to adapt, not because they were instructed to, but because the environment begins to teach them. A room that is usually calm feels wrong when cluttered. A clear surface makes scattered objects feel heavier, more deliberate. The discomfort of disorder grows not from guilt, but from awareness. They begin to notice when a room feels off, when something interrupts the flow, when an object doesn't belong where it rests. Standards they once resisted begin to live inside them, unspoken. This doesn't mean everyone becomes perfectly tidy. That was never the goal. Perfection is rigid. It invites pressure. The real goal is awareness, shared responsibility, a sense that care for the space belongs to everyone, without resentment keeping score in the background. The space itself starts to guide behavior. This is where design becomes a quiet teacher. Open storage makes neglect visible, but without shame. Clear surfaces reduce the mental weight of decision-making. Fewer objects mean fewer choices, and fewer choices mean less resistance. When tidiness is easy, participation stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like common sense. A hook by the door waits patiently for keys, exactly where the hand already reaches. A basket sits where shoes naturally fall, catching them before they scatter. A single bin becomes a temporary resting place for clutter, containing chaos instead of letting it spread. You are no longer just cleaning. You are choreographing behavior. And when someone finally joins in, even awkwardly, even imperfectly, you choose restraint. You resist correcting them. You don't refold the towel in front of them. You don't rearrange the dishes the moment they walk away. You let the effort stand, because nothing kills motivation faster than the feeling that trying isn't enough. Instead, you acknowledge it quietly. A simple, "Thanks for putting that away," lands gently, but deeply. It affirms participation without turning it into performance. Over time, those small acknowledgments become anchors, subtle rewards that encourage repetition. And then something remarkable happens. The house begins to teach itself. The floors stay clearer for longer. The air feels lighter, as if the space is no longer holding its breath. Mornings become smoother, because fewer decisions are required before the day even begins. Even arguments soften, because clutter often carries unspoken frustration. And when the environment calms, conversations tend to follow. The home stops demanding attention. And then, one ordinary day, something unexpected occurs. You come home tired, your body heavy with the day. You drop your bag by the door and pause. The room is already clean. The dishes are done. The couch is straightened. Nothing is announced. No one points it out. There is no celebration. There is only evidence. Evidence that influence doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. This is the quiet victory of invisible leadership. You didn't force change. You didn't lecture. You didn't demand compliance. You modeled care. You lived the rhythm. You let the environment speak when you stayed silent. And in doing so, you taught more than tidiness. You taught responsibility without shame. You taught order without control. You taught respect for shared space, not as a rule, but as a feeling. In a world obsessed with attention, choosing to influence silently is a radical act. It requires patience when progress is invisible, restraint when correction feels tempting, trust in a long game that doesn't reward urgency. But it works, because people don't remember what you nagged them about. They remember how your presence made the space feel. And when order becomes associated with peace instead of pressure, it stops being a demand and becomes a choice. So if you're living with messy family members, don't start by asking how to change them. Start by asking how to change the atmosphere. Ask how your habits speak when your mouth is closed. Ask what rhythm you're setting when no one is watching. Because the most powerful teacher in any home is not instruction. It is example. And if this quiet philosophy of influence resonates with you, if you believe change can happen without shouting, without force, without resentment, then stay here. like the video. Subscribe for more calm, thoughtful reflections on everyday life. Share this with someone who needs to hear that leadership doesn't have to be loud to be effective. Sometimes the greatest transformations begin with a single, silent act repeated daily, until the whole room learns how to breathe again.